Jakob Zetterström has turned around the critics at Derby County with some huge performances over the course of recent weeks. But does that mean that he's going to get a return of a bid from Brentford during the January transfer window? That is a huge question on the lips at the moment, and I think it certainly opens a question for Derby County fans. Now, obviously, if we go back to the summer, there was reports of a £3.5 million bid being submitted by Brentford to Derby County. However, it never got confirmed by local media or the manager. Now, obviously, you can let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments, but let's get into it and let's talk a little bit more. Now, Zetterström had a little bit of a slow start to the season for whatever reason, and I think he's a very, very good goalkeeper at this level. I think he's a very, very good keeper in general. I certainly think he could play in the Premier League easily. I think he's definitely got the quality in terms of shot stopping. I think in terms of distribution, he's definitely getting himself into that position. Now, the big question for me in that sort of regard of Jakob Zetterström is, how are things going to change if he was to leave? Now, we're going to get into that in this video, so let's get into it. So obviously, a £3.5 million bid was reported to have been made by Brentford during the January window, and it was a bid which I just think was a very, very stupid bid, if I'm completely honest. It was a bid which I always felt was very, very short and didn't necessarily anywhere near hit the valuation of which Derby County would want. Now, I believe Derby County bought him for around 1.7 million, with add-ons rising up to 2.2, and I think for Derby County, if they do sell Zetterström during January or this upcoming summer, I think that we've got to be looking at £7-8 million for him, because he's an unbelievably good goalkeeper. Now, don't get me wrong, I don't necessarily think he's got all the clean sheets that he deserves this season. I think he's only on about 3 or 4 across the course of all competitions. But I do think that he's a goalkeeper that could take us to that next level and could be involved in the progression of the football club. Now, I also do understand that as an owner of David Klaus, he's also got to look at ways that he can improve this squad without necessarily stretching down deep into his own pockets, and that will come by selling players on. And Zetterström is one of the few players in our squad that has a sell-on value. You look at someone like Zetterström, Langas, Ryan Brewster, Max Johnston. They're the sort of players you look at with sell-on value, and I sort of look at it and go, if we can get 8 to 9 million for Jakob Zetterström, I think that puts us in a great position to be able to re-improve that goalkeeper position. And I think there's plenty of goalkeepers out there where with 8 to 9 million we could replace Zetterström and maybe even improve on Zetterström. But it's a massive situation, it's a massive question that we will have to deal with at Derby County when the time comes. Now, when that time comes, I don't know. I'm hoping it's not during the January window, because I think if Derby County were to let him go in the January window, it'd have to be an outrageous offer. For me, for him to go in January, it's got to be upwards of £12 million. You look similar to the Erin Cashin deal at minimum for me, so that we have the proper budget to be able to go out and pick up a better goalkeeper. Whereas we didn't, we had that opportunity in January where we'd already sorted out Erin Cashin's replacement before Erin Cashin went, pretty much. We went and got him Matt Clark, who was signed, I think, the day before Cashin went, a couple of days before Cashin went, sorry. You've then obviously got Langas, who signed a couple of weeks after. And for me, that is the position that Derby County need to keep themselves on when it comes to Zetterström, is that if Zetterström is going to move on, we've got to make sure that he moves on for the right fee, and a fee that we can replace him with equal quality or better, and someone who is going to be better than Zetterström will be, because we can't really be stepping backwards. I think last season letting go of Cashin was a huge risk, but the players we bought in to replace have been a huge positive and have been incredible and exactly what you want to see from replacements of what is Erin Cashin, 22, 23, and we've replaced him excellently with a player who's about a year or so older in Sondre Langas, who in my opinion is now equal to, if not worth more than Erin Cashin, and we spent less than half of the fee for Cashin on Sondre Langas. And that is sort of the position we find ourselves in, where any player that does move on needs to be given that opportunity to really step up. And if they do go, if Zetterström does go, if Langas does end up making a move in the summer, Max Johnston, anything like that, the big question is always going to be about the replacement, and Derby County have got to make sure that that replacement is absolutely perfect. Who that replacement will be, I don't know right now. How that replacement will impact Derby County going forward, I also don't know, because we don't know if it will happen. But for me, and you can obviously let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments, I wouldn't be letting Zetterström or Langas go for anywhere less than 10 million if an offer was to come in during January. Now, as it stands right now, I don't believe there's any interest in Sondre Langas, but best believe if he continues his run of form, stays fit till the summer, there's going to be a host of Premier League and maybe even European clubs wanting to bring him in. And will it turn a corner? I think that all depends on where Derby County find themselves this summer, whether that be a playoff position, whether it be promotion, who knows? But I think that's going to be the massive question. Now, I don't think Zetterström will leave in January. Obviously, we've not heard much in regards to the Brentford bid since it happened. I think it was day before deadline day, which is obviously a positive because it means he stayed at the football club up until January at least. But as soon as that window opens again, there is no doubt in my mind that clubs will be looking at a player like Zetterström, will be looking at a player like Langas, and if the opportunity becomes available for them to pick those players up, they absolutely will. Now, Derby County are obviously consistently losing money, as is, I'm pretty sure, every football club in the EFL. So it is going to be interesting to see how Derby County do manage that situation and how that interest at Brentford, whatever interest may come over the course of the next few weeks as well, sort of affects Derby County, because I do believe interest is going to come if Derby County continue this form. Now, if Derby County go unbeaten until the January transfer window, we've got to keep this squad together, but we've also got to improve, and to improve we've got to let players go. So we've also got to weigh up the pros and cons of letting potential players like Zetterström move on. And I don't want Zetterström to go. I think you agree with that as well. I think Zetterström's been brilliant. I think if we're looking to move players on, it's got to be more of those fringe players. You look at a Liam Thompson, you look at a Caden Jackson, maybe a Corey Blackett-Taylor, Ryan Niambi maybe, Ebo Adams as an outside shout depending on David Ozo's injury. And that's sort of the position we find ourselves in. Now, obviously, you can let me know your thoughts on this one down in the comments. I obviously do think it's a little bit of a difficult discussion to be having about your number one goalkeeper, because for me, Zetterström is by far and away our best goalkeeper. I think Vickers is a brilliant backup, brilliant to step in, but he's certainly not someone who I'd want to be consistently our number one, because as much as I think he can step in and be great, I also think he has the ability to make mistakes and not necessarily be in games, if that makes sense. But we will wait and see what happens. Now, obviously, you can let me know your thoughts on this down in the comments. If you have not done so already, make sure you hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and turn on that notification bell, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye bye, guys.